Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a scintillating short lecture on the cross-cultural exchanges on the Silk Roads. This can be found in Bentley and Ziegler, your text, okay, chapter 12. And we've done some work on our simulation so far, and let's take a look at some of the deeper aspects that we're going to be dealing with on the Silk Road, which is a paramount, important, and significant establishment of cross-cultural exchange by the College Board. Long distance travel in the ancient world. Okay, there is a lack of enforcement outside of established settlements, which is one of the things that makes the Silk Road so unique, that it's able to carry on from approximately 300 to 1200 or so. And as the Silk Road improves and the value of the Silk Road is seen, and empires are able to expand even further, okay, the Silk Road becomes more and more safe. But that is not indicative of early travel. Okay, trade networks start to develop, and obviously, as I said before, the Silk Road is about 900 years, and it's not something that is going to be developed all over one period of time. And it really starts with a lot of the Greek colonization under Alexander the Great, and the movement and the eastward expansion. And then it continues with groups like the Romans on the far west, and the Chinese in the far east, and their ability to create good infrastructure, roads and bridges, and figuring out landscape, terrain, physical geography, and weather patterns. And that slowly but surely starts to develop these trade networks. Okay? So as we move forward, trade in the Hellenistic world, or the world of the ancient Greeks, as it started, we've talked a little bit about Bactria and India, northern India, and some of the significant things that they had to offer: spices, pepper, gems, and pearls. The Persians and the Egyptians had significant grain stores, and the Mediterranean colonies had wine, oil, olives, grapes, other things like that. And what this slowly starts to do is develop and realize the need for people who are good at selling goods. Okay, and this merchant class develops, and we see this for the first time really in world history as kind of an accepted subclass between the aristocracy and the peasants, almost a business class that's working here. Okay, the Silk Roads were, as John Green says, neither made of silk, nor were they roads that were necessarily always very smooth. The assumption that people traveled all the way from one end to the other is also false. There were various routes along the way, and people became experts on their significant route. Okay, but it is named principally for that commodity coming from China. And they were very dependent on the empires within the Silk Road being stable and being able to provide protection and warranting enough discipline and law that it was not worth it for marauders to steal the goods. Okay, as the Silk Road goes on, and as we move further into our study in the next couple of units, we'll see that the land routes continue to be significant, but will also develop this great Indian Ocean trade and sea lanes, and as maritime advancements continue to move on in navigation, we'll see a greater trade throughout the Indian Ocean from the Middle East to China, which will be significant. And those two trades, the Silk Road trade and the Indian Ocean trade, will overlap a little bit. Now, when we think about silk and we think about silk robes, which is in your simulation, or we think about glass beads, we think about spices, obviously today, to many of us, those are things that we either can get very easily, or most of the commodities that we want we can get very easily, or they don't seem as valuable to you. But just keep in mind, or put yourself in the time and place as to how significant this trade was and how valuable these goods were, because they were simply things that people in other parts of the world didn't have. And regardless of what we think about their monetary importance to us today, they were extremely valuable and provided a great source of wealth. And along with that wealth comes the trade of religion and food and politics and a lot of other cultural things that are indirectly passed on as we move. Here's a map, and you can see some of the basic Silk Road routes. You could probably guess that this is fairly simplified. And then the sea routes that'll begin to develop are in purple after that. Okay? And as we start moving along, there will be many, many more offshoots of these roads that continue to connect east and west. Okay? As I said before, it was divided into small segments. There were tariffs and tolls to finance different people. People started making their wealth off of these tariffs and tolls as well, and off of providing protection. There were income incentives to maintain safety and maintain passage and to upkeep these routes, whether they be as well upkept as the Roman roads or they simply be paths that you could navigate through the mountains. They were all significant. Okay? Speaking of that cultural trade, Buddhism and Hinduism, we realize that Buddhism develops in India along with Hinduism. Buddhism, however, is the lesser in popularity, and it moves and it travels along these trade routes. Merchants carry these religious ideas. They'll continue after a while also to carry Islam and Christianity and move them further east or further west, vice versa. Here's the spread of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity. You can kind of see where those spread along the routes, okay, and where everything travels. You notice that Hinduism does not travel very far from its origins. Buddhism moves east. Christianity moves both east and west. So originally Buddhism is restricted to foreign merchants, but as things keep moving on and it rises in popularity, the large population begins to adopt Buddhist philosophies and moves China into a different direction philosophically. Okay? In Southeast Asia, the sea lanes are really more significant to moving this along, obviously with the different archipelagos and peninsulas. Buddhism is more successful, but there are different strands of Hinduism that also make their way, and including not just the aspects of the specific religion, but also the written communication like Sanskrit, and they're gradually increasing in popularity. There is also Christianity that's spread, okay? And as it spreads through the Middle East and North Africa and Europe, there are sizable communities that build off of this practice, and part of that is springboarded by Rome adopting this faith. Christianity in Southwest Asia, influence of ascetic practices, meaning the practices of monks. One person that's significant in that is Nestorius, who is a Greek theologian, who emphasized the human nature of Jesus. And when we talk about the Nestorian schism, that's simply the Nestorian divide, okay, in the Christian religion. All of these offshoots that are going to divide before some of the great schisms later in Christianity. Manichaeism, okay, Mani was a devout Zoroastrian, viewed himself as a prophet, and there's also a spread Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest religions, we can date back to the Sumerians, is also something that was spreading. Although it wasn't very popular, it was something that continued to move. So there's this great cultural exchange that's happening, and a lot of it is predominantly surrounding religion. Okay. Monarchian society was developed into the elect and the hearers, okay, the devout and the laity, so basically the religious leaders and those who were following them. And although it was spread through these Silk Road routes, okay, many Monarchians were persecuted, and the religion slowly declines. That's it for lecture 1 on the Silk Road.